Thanks again for tuning in for another Tuesday Training Podcast. Today I have my friend and training partner, Tyler Fischer here. Ty, tell him who you are.
Well, like you said, first and foremost, friend Sean, training partner. We work out probably a handful of times a week together. I have been doing health and fitness related stuff for the past 10 years, I think, is when I really got into it back in 2010. That was right when I graduated high school, and a buddy came up and said, "Hey, do you want to try CrossFit?" And I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. Never heard of it, but let's go. And pretty much since then, I've been in that world. Tried a couple different things outside of there, but I've been doing CrossFit for 10 years, coaching for 9 of those years. Very passionate about it.
Very cool. And I think that's where Ty and I really became friends, first and foremost, because he had a lot more training than I did. I didn't start training until the end of my college career, really. But with him being a coach, with you being a coach, pretty much first and foremost, that kind of geared your fitness endeavors, correct?
Yes.
That was kind of like what you were passionate about. And even you still do a little bit of coaching here and there too. So I guess, what does your training look like? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's interesting because over the years, it changes a lot depending on just what you're interested in. And now I'm starting to feel, I'm about to turn 28, just feeling the first effects of age set in, which I know is young.
Just wait till 30, dude.
Yeah.
Wait till 30.
I know it's young, but those aches and pains do creep up on you.
They hit you faster than you think they would.
Yeah, so in the beginning, my training probably looked very erratic and not very intentful, I guess you would say, or purposeful. It was just like, let's just go in there and let's just go as crazy as we can and get super fit. After a few years, you can hang on for a little bit when you're young, but after a few years, you realize you cannot.
You're amazing. It's amazing how resilient you are when you're younger.
Yeah.
Amazing how resilient. I actually had this conversation with another guest. The child, anyone under 12, is the most resilient human being on the planet.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Sorry. Continue.
No, you're totally right. But more recently, my training has definitely shifted away from performance-based, trying to be at, competitive in the CrossFit world, whatever that might look like, and it's shifted more towards longevity and trying to just be healthy and functional, while still performing as well as you can, but prioritizing that longevity and functionality of it. Because after a while, the aches and pains just add up, and I was sick of it, and I decided, okay, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to figure out how to fix my body so I can do this down the road 10, 20, 30 years, you know what I mean? So right now, my training looks a lot like a lot of mobility, doing a lot of that for the past 3 or 4 months. I've really honed in on that. So there's a ton of mobility every day, waking up early to do that. And then I'm training 5 days a week, exercising 5 days a week, taking 2 days rest, and trying to keep it at an intensity that I feel is sustainable, which is just something that I've kind of honed in on over the years of paying attention to my body.
Right.
In the beginning, that's hard to tell for sure, but after you've got some data under your belt, you can kind of tell, all right, this is a little too much today, or this is not enough.
You know how your body feels day in and day out. Whether
Exactly.
you get good sleep, bad sleep, whether you can push the pedal, you back off a little bit. But it sounds like you really are dialed in with your consistency. You said you train 5 days a week, take 2 days of rest, but you used also another word, intent. I'm assuming your rest days are intentful rest days.
Yeah, so something you and I talked about maybe a week ago or so, was that high-low training methodology where you have, for anybody who might not know, the basic idea is just you have one day that's a higher intensity, higher load, or higher CNS demand, and then the next day is low on those domains, and then you kind of alternate. And so the way I structure those 5 days, I have 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is a workout, Thursday is a rest or an active recovery. I usually just go with the rest. Yeah. But, you can throw it in there, an active recovery if you want. And then Friday, Saturday train, Sunday rest or active recovery. So I don't do high-low as every other day exactly, but I do have my higher intensity workout being on a Wednesday, so I can then rest on Thursday to recover. and then a higher intensity workout on a Saturday so I can rest on Sunday to recover.
Makes sense.
And then those other days are somewhere, I wouldn't say they're necessarily low intensity, but I'm just not pushing it as hard because I am trying to be somewhat purposeful about what I'm doing,
right?
And not just go high, and then just like burn out by the end of the week.
Right. Well, the consistent higher demand days are what's going to drive your load to exceed your capacity. When load exceeds capacity, that's when we have the injuries, and that's what we want to avoid at all costs, especially for our clients and our members. That's kind of what drives me as a coach. Is I want to try to find that line for myself and for my members, where that load to capacity ratio is. Where how high can we get with load without exceeding capacity, but we're still building capacity?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's the idea of just taking 2 steps forward and like 1 step back, or trying to take. No, I think I said that wrong. Trying to take a step backwards so you can go forwards.
Right.
Like that whole concept. And I feel like a lot of people miss that, especially because like in the beginning when you start working out, you can kind of just keep pushing that. You can progress linearly, and you can just keep adding the intensity and keep going. And for a couple months, maybe up to a year, if you've never worked out before, maybe you'll see some results continuously pushing. But after a while, we all get to a point where you can't just do that anymore, and you have to take that step backward, or maybe even 5 or 6 or 10 steps backwards in order to then go forward again.
Right.
And that's the piece that I know I missed, like probably for several years when I was younger. I completely missed that. And I think a lot of people also miss that after they get past their first year of getting into health and fitness or whatever. And I've become more like obsessed with that concept of how can I go back to something that I've maybe glossed over, haven't been paying attention to enough, like mobility, for example. How can I dial the intensity or the load back to fix an underlying issue, and then build back up and go further than I was before? But that's really difficult it's like a tough pill to swallow a lot of times.
It is, and I'm one that like really likes to push the limit of the human body to see what I'm truly capable of doing. But I can't do that on a consistent enough basis unless I take rest days.
Yes.
That's the biggest key for me, and that it took a while for me to really dial that in. It was funny because I preached it to my athletes, but I couldn't do it myself because I was a strength coach, I was cocky, I was waking up at 4 a.m., I was drinking coffee, I was drinking energy drinks, like I thought I was on top of the world. But no, it was leaking water out of a cup without filling it back in.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that analogy a little bit ago. But what are some of the ways that you refill your cup, whether it be rest days or your active recovery days? What are like your go-to things that really refuel your body?
Yeah, I think I don't do anything special, like no crazy cryotherapy or anything like that.
Besides the rain drinks that you and I love.
Besides 300 milligrams of caffeine in 5 minute.
I'm still looking for them to sponsor me, but
that'd be amazing. They are delicious.
They are amazing.
But I don't do any of the like fancy recovery stuff. Not that doesn't work. I just don't do it. I do the basic stuff. Like I take my rest days or my active recovery days, and I think 2 a week is appropriate, at least for me. Maybe some people can do less, maybe some people need more, but for my body that seems to work. I mentioned already the mobility. It's not just stretching. I'm also trying to do like mashing, the muscles, and my fiance is a massage therapist, and that helps.
Definitely.
So that you'd be surprised I don't get a ton of massages, but it does help. So a lot of like that sort of mashing work with the cross balls or foam rollers, or she helps me out. But then the other 2 big pieces to that are sleep, which I know I don't get enough of, but I do try to get about 8 hours a night.
Okay.
Personally, I think I need more like 9, sometimes 9.5, because if I don't set an alarm, that's usually what I'll go to.
Yeah.
But I try to go at least for 8 bare minimum. And then also diet is something else that I've been playing around with a lot recently, which is if you look at exercise and diet, I struggle more with the diet side,
100%.
which I think a lot of people
100%.
do. But for me, that's like a big hurdle, and I've been focusing on quality, which is probably more important, but I focus a lot on just like amount too, trying to make sure I'm getting enough carbs to fuel my body and recover at certain points, and enough protein for the same reasons. I tend to not get enough calories.
Same.
And so I really, like this week actually, I upped my calories about 500 a day, because for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been consistent with this lower calorie diet, and then I really noticed over the past like week that my performance, but also just body comp and everything is kind of stagnated. And so this week I'm actually upping it 500 calories to see what kind of effects that has. And so far it's only been 4 days, but so far so good. So I might do this for 2 weeks and see how that goes. But I think that helps recovery, making sure I'm fueling my body correctly. So nothing fancy.
Nice. I'm a big believer in the "it depends" model, and yes. I like the way you said. I like the way you kind of like you want to see how it affects your body, because different nutrition programs, whether it be counting your macros, which I do thanks to my wife, intermittent fasting. There's a lot of research of good things from intermittent fasting. I know there's a couple people that do keto. Like there's 1,000 diets, but like. It's what works for you that satisfies what you want to do and what you need to do on a regular basis to sustain a lifestyle of activity or physical activity. I think is what's most important when trying to find a nutrition program that you could be on or a training program that you could be on, which I know from a training program perspective, there's a lot of them out there as well that are all encompassing and that you have to scale depending on the skill level that you're at. Now, you created an Instagram profile called the Scale Division at one point, and huge fan of being able to scale the skill work or the loading of workouts to fit the necessary skill or strength of the athlete. So talk to me a little bit about like what brought that to the forefront of your brain and why you created the scale division, and what's the mission statement behind it?
Yeah, so first of all, for anybody who's interested, at the Scale Division.
I was going to plug it in, don't worry. It's going to be in the show notes. Yeah. It's going to be in the show notes.
We can talk more about that later, like as far as like the quote business part of it. But why did that pop into my head, and why did I like decide to go after it, kind of a thing? So first of all, I don't know if there's a clear mission statement, but the idea is that everybody scales everything. Everybody scales something. Everybody scales something, and we all just do the best with what we got. So like you go to any sort of group fitness class, if there's more than one person in the class, chances are not everybody's doing the same thing.
Correct.
So we all tend to scale something, whether it's up or down. And the reason why that kind of popped into my mind, like that's in the CrossFit world, that is a pretty well-known like motto, is to scale things. They preach that at all of their certifications and whatnot, and all the classes you go to, they preach that. But it never really like stood out to me. I mean, I got it, and that's how I trained people, but it never was like something for me. I was like, oh, I'm just going to do what's on the board.
Right.
I don't need to scale.
Right.
I got this.
That's good.
I got this. But I think it really all started back in 2016, which is when I hurt my back for the last time, at least so far.
Good.
But knock on wood. I've had back problems since I was in high school.
Okay.
It's like my dad always had back problems. My brothers always had back problems. I don't know. I think it's something in the genes, man.
It's definitely hereditary.
Yeah, and like I said, since high school, before I ever worked out a day in my life, I was having back problems. So like, I don't attribute it to doing any sort of exercise. However, in this particular instance in 2016, I was deadlifting heavy and I hurt my back. Long story short. And ever since then, I kind of like, it was a rough couple of months for sure. But then even over like 2016, 2017, 2018, even into last year, 2019, my training just never got fully back to where it was prior to that. Like I never got my strength fully back. Part of that is just because mentally I was just like, I can't train hard or I'm going to hurt myself.
Right.
Like whether or not that was true, that's just how I was thinking.
It's almost like you're walking on eggshells to an extent.
All the time.
Okay.
In the gym, at least, is how it felt. Even when I got to pain-free, which took a couple of months, but once I got to pain-free, even then, like I just still never wanted to push it fully.
Yeah.
You know? And so only recently, as I mentioned, with me taking mobility a lot more serious, not that I didn't in the past, but I definitely stepped it up now, and thinking more like longevity, like I started getting knee pain that I never had before and shoulder pain I never had before. And I just naturally, like I've never been too much of someone to give in to like a peer pressure. So when somebody comes to me with a crazy workout, if I think it's crazy, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I've always been that way. And so even recently with the aches and pains and everything, I really started scaling things to fit me like perfectly. Like I wouldn't do anything that would take me outside of that pain-free movement structure. And so quarantine hits, everybody loses their job, and I'm sitting around and I'm thinking, all right, well, I feel this way about working out. I'm scaling things, especially now that we don't have gyms. We're all scaling something. And so I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way, and maybe I can reach some people that way. And so, boom, the scale division comes into play.
Very cool.
So that's kind of how that came about.
Nice. And I know you said you didn't really have a mission statement. I love the fact that, like, yes, everyone scales something. Whether they scale down, which is the most common version of scaling, or they scale up with something too. There's always a medium.
Exactly.
There's always a medium portion. Whether you scale up or down is the choice that you make going into a workout, or for the coach's discretion. And that meant a lot to me, or at least I took hold of that, because there are definitely workouts and skills that I can't do, especially in the CrossFit world. I'm terrible at double unders. I will scale the number of double unders in every workout I do unless it's 20 or less. It's just something I need to practice, but my practice can't come during a workout that is of like a high heart rate workout. It can't come. It has to come during practice, which is low heart rate intentional training.
Yeah.
That, to me, that's how you bring up those scaled skills. Yeah, scaled skills. So I think that's kind of where I really locked into the scale division, or what your intent was behind that. And I use that to preach to a lot of my clients. Like, look, we're doing this step up at a 16-inch box for now. Once we progressive overload, we either add weight, then we bring the weight back down and start raising the box up a little bit, go 18 inches, 20 inches, 22 inches. Like, we can do that to progressively overload the movement and get stronger in the process of it. Better legs, or better quads, better glutes, a lot better low backs that way, especially you're not bringing load past capacity in that sense, because we're scaling the load. If you increase that load to a certain extent so it doesn't exceed capacity, train that, capacity goes up. Then it's easier to do more. That's to me, that is the importance of scaling movements in workouts. And I think you'd agree.
100%. And like you just mentioned, it's not just necessarily, like you were saying, movements too, beyond just loads. Like, it's not just the weight on the barbell necessarily. It could be the movement. And something that I think is also important to point out is you might be able to do a movement, like you said, double unders, but that does, just because you have double unders down and you can do a set of 50, that's cool. Like, that's a lot of double unders, and someone might say that is, you got double unders. But if the workout has 500 in it, and you can do sets of 50, but it might still be like stressful on you, and you might not get the intent of the workout. You might not actually get the stimulus that was intended, because you'll just eventually that skill's going to break down, and you don't have the volume there yet. So you scale it back. Instead of 500, you do 250. That's still a lot of double unders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So
we did it yesterday for
exactly
a workout. So 250 double unders was no joke to me, and I even broke it up. I think I was doing 10s or 15s at one point. I wasn't proud of that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a skill I know I need to work on. It was already scaled from the initial workout anyway. So scaled it. Need to get better at it. That's the finish or the end product of the workout. But at the same time, I know I did get a little bit better at it than that day.
You probably got better at it doing that than if you tried to push through the 500, because once you hit your limit, everything else after that is going to be just a waste of time, and you're also not going to get the point of the workout either. But the thing is, it's also day to day. Like, you might, maybe in one scenario you got 250 all day and you can do that, but maybe the next week when that comes up, the same amount that you did last week, you can't do today because of something else that you did yesterday, or you didn't get enough sleep, or it's just not there today. Like, it's just not clicking.
The cadence might be off.
Yeah, so you might have ring muscle-ups, for example, but that doesn't mean that every day you have to do all of them. You know what I mean? You can still scale back even when you have mastered something. You know what I mean? And
it gives you more choices. Scaling things give you more choices to be the whole live to fight another day thing.
Yes.
That speaks volumes when I train my clients, because I want them to be able to function on a regular basis, not just come in to the gym, crush a workout, leave. And we don't want our people to crawl out of the gym. I never want that. I want them to walk tall, be very proud of the work that they put in today. They either learned something, they got a little bit stronger, or they feel a lot better about the work that they put in, because now their life is better. They're walking downstairs more efficiently. They don't get huffed and puffed walking upstairs or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Or maybe they can lift their kids up and play ball with them in their 60s. Something along those lines.
There's a difference between training and testing.
Oh, yeah.
I
like that.
You don't get any better from testing.
I like that.
You just don't. And testing, when you crawl out the gym and you can't move and you feel like you've literally left it all out there, that was testing. And you probably didn't get any better. You found out where you were, which is appropriate sometimes.
Oh, sometimes a lot of times it's fun to really test yourself. It's
always fun.
In my opinion, it is very important to test yourself.
Yes.
But those days don't need to be every day.
No, they're few and far in between.
That's a lot of what we're saying.
They're few and far in between, especially as you've trained longer and longer and longer. They become fewer and fewer and fewer, less frequent. So yeah, I think that's important to note. And you don't get better when you're testing, so you got to focus on the training part of it.
Well said.
And walk out with your head held high.
That's a great message.
Yep.
Perfect. So I want to end with 2 thought-provoking questions for you.
Let's hear them.
Number 1. You're sitting at a dinner table with 3 empty chairs. Who are you putting in those chairs for one dinner? I don't care what the dinner is.
Okay.
I don't care who's sitting at the table with you.
Ah, damn. No, so I actually think about this question all the time, and I have 2, and I cannot fill the third. The third could be any one of 20 different people.
Okay.
The first 2 that always come to mind are Barack Obama and Martin Luther King Jr.
Very cool.
Those 2 come to mind all the time, because it's just the story that they have, the shit that they had gone through. I just can't fathom. And so I would just want to hear what they have to say about that stuff. The third changes daily. It could be anybody. Yeah. It could be it could literally be anybody from some sort of athletic figure, in the CrossFit world. It could be somebody that had, like Rich Froning, the guy who won it 4 times more than anybody else. Could be interested in hearing about that. Could be someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, who's this YouTube marketing guy who just Gary V, this business guy on YouTube that I get drawn to. It could be some stand-up comedian, Dave Chappelle. Who knows?
Oh, Dave Chappelle would be fun.
I would love,
that's a good call. Dave Chappelle would be fun.
Yeah, he's the goat.
I'd like to be at that dinner table. Move over.
Yeah, but I'll let you know when I solidify a third. I like to keep that spot open.
That's fair. Last question, and I'll leave this kind of choice up to you. Either the best or the worst advice you've ever been given. Yeah.
That's a tough
I told you
one.
it was gonna be thought-provoking.
That is a thought-provoking one.
I love this question. Best or worst, whichever comes to your mind.
Worst.
Whatever's kind of like there.
I'm just gonna go with the best.
Okay.
And I don't know whether or not it came from any particular person in my life, or if it was just something I read, and that was just kind of like something that floats out there in the ethos. But I think the best thing that I've ever learned as far as advice and whatnot is just like, don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. Not only that, but actively seek that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I agree. I have to agree with that. On a regular basis, it's good to get outside your comfort zone, especially like in a time where we're almost stuck in our apartments, houses, in our comfort zone. Like, learn something new. Take on a new hobby. Take on a new craft. Like, read a new book, something that you're not like regularly reading. Do something that's different, and I like that.
Yeah.
Good message. Very cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining our Tuesday podcast. Again, Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll plug all the show notes, or I'll plug his Scale Division Instagram at the bottom of the show notes. Like, share, and subscribe. If you guys want to share with your friends and family, that'd be great. I appreciate it. Any final thoughts heading out?
Just keep pushing through this quarantine.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Catch you on the next one.
Thank you.